Hadouken! Woo! Are you ready for some brawling bar action? I mean, I don't know why you have to fight in bars all the time, but it's always more fun. Roadhouse! Welcome to another video of Cardboard East. My name's Shay. I play board games from Asia and share what I find with all of you. Today we're going to take a look at another Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign from Japan for Fantasy Tavern Brawl. Here we have Fantasy Tavern Brawl. Now this is going to be one of the quickest unboxings ever because you unbox the game, here are the rules, and then this is the game. You get all these meeples here, which are just dump out, and a deck of cards, and that's pretty much the game. Setting up the game is quite simple. The first thing you have to do is separate all the meeples into all the different colors, and then each player will take all the meeples of their color. Next, you're going to take the starting tavern card, which is easy to find because it looks the same on front and back. Place it here in the center of the table. Each player will going to place one of their meeples on top of that card, and you are almost ready to play. The next thing you're going to do is take this scenario card, and you can see here there's 1, 2, 3 scenarios, and then 4, 5, and 6, and they go anywhere from the introduction scenario all the way here to draft brawl, which is my favorite way to play the game. I actually prefer 5 and 6, but this will slowly introduce more of the characters. The next thing you want to do is after you pick a scenario, such as the introductory scenario, you'll look at the composition of the deck, and that's 2 dwarves, 2 dorks, 2 orcs, 2 halflings, and then it's going to show you here. Then you're going to take your pile of cards, and I can't strongly recommend enough that you do not shuffle these cards because my friend shuffled them as soon as I pulled them out, and it was a headache. And you're going to make sure that everyone has the same hand, such as 2 dwarves, 2 halflings, and 2 orcs, which is black all the way back here. And once everyone has the same hand, well, then you are ready to begin. Now, a game of Fantasy Tavern Brawl is quite simple. You're simply going to be taking one of these cards in your hand, and you're going to be dropping it on the table. You're going to be flicking it onto the table, or you're going to be push it to the edge of the table and push onto the table. And hopefully, this card will touch this starting card, and then it'll become part of the tavern. So now, this is part of the tavern, and then meeples can go on it as well. Now, each of these cards is going to have a specific rule set, and we'll go over these right now. Now, before I go into all the cards, I do want to mention that each player does get a player aid. There is a mistake, however, on the back here, where you can see these 2 symbols are the same, and they should have changed it from another one. So I do hope that in the final Kickstarter version that this has been corrected and will no longer be an issue. But without further ado, let's introduce our rogues gallery. So first off here, we have the halfling. The halfling, you're going to place the card on the side of the table and flick it to the side. And that will get the card maybe touching this one is your ideal thing. And then you're going to take this X4. So you can take 4 meeples, stack them on top of each other, and then flick them. Now, the rules do not dictate whether you're going to stack them like this, which is impossible because they will fall, or you could stack them like this, which is the only way I've been able to do it. One of my friends was able to stagger them like this and then flick them all together. Ideally, you're going to want them to land on the halfling card or on the other card or any of the other cards that are here on the table. Next up is the dwarf, which is my favorite card. You're going to place 4 meeples first, and then you're going to place this card on top. So you're going to take 4 of your meeples, place them up here, and then take this card and place it on top. Now this is eventually going to create like a tower almost. So you could create like a first floor, second floor, a third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor, depending on how many players there are. And it's going to be more and more tempting for people to knock over because, I mean, it just screams to get knocked over. Next up, we have the goblin. You're going to place the card on the edge of the table and then flick it or slide it across the table. Hopefully, the goblin will land onto one of these or maybe even knock off this floor, exposing these here and any other meeples that are on top, which is hilarious good times, by the way. And then, if this card is touching another card, well then you could choose one of these two. You could either put this arrow down, drop 3 meeples of your choice onto that card that you just flicked, meaning this card here. You could take any 3 meeples and put them to any other card. So that would be in the tavern to another card in the tavern. So she is really good times. Next you have the elf, and you're going to place the card on top of the table onto the tavern, and then you're going to flick 3 meeples one at a time. So you're going to place this onto the tablets here, and then you're going to flick 3 meeples. 1, 2, 3. No. Oh well. Next we have the orc. You're going to fling the card, kind of like a frisbee almost, onto the table. If they land on it, put 2 onto the orc card. You can move meeples from one room to the other on the card. So you're just going to flick it like so, and then you're going to move to maybe these 2 here and place them here, and they'll slide off. Maybe they'll slide. It's falling. That's one of the fun things about this game. Next is the demon. You're going to drop this card from above like a paratrooper, and if it touches another card, well, then you will remove a meeple from underneath this card, and then you're going to take a meeple and place it on top of this one. Last but not least is the Minotaur, which is my favorite. You're going to flick him on the table like a frisbee. If it touches another card, well, then you can place a meeple onto the card. You can push 3 people from one side of the tavern to another card. You can flick it on there like so, and then maybe you could think, oh, I'm going to take all these blue ones and then place them here in hopes that they will slide eventually off. And this obnoxious creation is Fantasy Tavern Brawl. Oh! Now, I'm going to start with some negatives here, things that I didn't like. Now, the one thing that I didn't like was that it's hard to fit everything in the box. Now, when you open it up, the cards are vacuum sealed and all the meeples come in a little plastic bag. That's great. So when I tried to close it back in, it would not fit. So, but if I threw away all the plastic bags, threw away the plastic bag that I had for the cards, the plastic bag I had for the meeples, everything fits nice and sound. I may have to have turned like a meeple or 2 there, but everything fits in this nice little box. Also, some of the player aids had mistakes on them. So I hope that in the final production of the game that they fix those and make sure that everything is super streamlined and ready to go. I was also really quite sad that, well, there's a wolf on this cover, like this giant wolf, but he's not in the game. That's really sad to me. Also, there is this giant Minotaur that you can't play with unless you play like one of the later scenarios. And I feel that's kind of sad. Like, what's up with the Minotaur? He's by far my favorite character, and he's not even on the cover. What's up with that, dude? Now, I had to get those complaints out of the way because I really enjoy this game. I have grown more and more into party games because I'm gaming later and later at night, and the more cons that I go to, the more meetups that I go to, the more I start gaming in those later wee hours, and I kind of want something that my brain can kind of process, and these party games just really shine at those moments. Now, Fantasy Tavern Brawl really does a really good job with the theme. It definitely feels like you have this mystical tavern that's kind of growing on the table, which is bizarre when you think about it, but it makes sense in a fantasy world. Like, this is a magical tavern that just expands with rooms, and how you're slowly populating it and you're trying to get as many people as you can. And I love this idea that, yeah, it's a fist fight and it's a brawl, but at the same time, it's kind of like this area control fight of like, whose bar is this anyway? This is an orc bar. This is a human bar. This is a bar for elves. And I kind of like that little emergent narrative that appears there in the game. The artwork itself is, you know, it's quite fine. Like, the artwork of the cards is really nice and clean. The iconography was a little bit much at first, but after a while you get used to it and you kind of understand how all that information is displayed onto the cards. And it's so interesting to show like these cards, but you don't really get to see what the table state is. So I've taken the liberty of showing like some photos here of what it could look like. I never got into the mood of like, I'm really not good at taking photos when I play the games because I usually just get so lost into them. But here's what some of those really obscure things look like when you play the game. And it has this definite aesthetic when you play the game that it feels really fun and loose, and it's kind of how interesting how the cards kind of land on the table and how you're knocking some pieces off the bar and getting your pieces to land in the bar. The gameplay does play somewhat similarly, but if you follow the scenarios, then you can see that like there's a nice intro scenarios where like some certain animals or certain creatures or characters are in the game, some aren't. And it's interesting to see how the game slowly progresses into that. Now, while the last scenario, it has people drafting their cards, I don't feel that as interesting as just doing a random hand of whatever's there. And I find that to be the most fun, of just like, oh, whatever's there, I have no idea what's coming, but it's going to be there and it's going to be fun. But that's just my personal preference of just, it's just fast to set up. Everyone gets a random hand and we all play, and who knows what's going to be there. The drafting is a little bit interesting because I have played that method, and you get to see most of the cards in the game, so that way you can kind of expect to see what's coming. You can expect to see if there's a Minotaur coming. You can expect that a demon is going to fall from the sky onto the table. I do really like the story arc of the game, of how you have this nice little card with some meeples on it, and how the tavern begins to grow, and like meeples get to scatter all over the table and becomes even more chaotic. That's really, really fun. And if you have like a felt tabletop or a playmat that makes the cards like extra slippery, then oh yeah, this game bangs. It's really good. It's really, really fun. But I love that story arc of seeing how the cards, the tavern kind of grows and it gets populated with more and more meeples, and there's this nice little arc to it. And sometimes like cards just lay a certain way to kind of protect meeples that are underneath, and you know that they're going to be fine. And those dwarf cards are just adding extra layers. There is just so much fun, like getting multiple layers. If you can get to like 3 or 4, then it just becomes so tempting for someone else, just like, oh, that's a tower, I'm knocking that tower down. That's like a moral imperative at that point with this game. How could you not knock down a tower of dwarves? I mean, seriously. In terms of like teaching the game, it's quite simple. I think you have to go through each of the cards and explain what they do and explain the iconography. But once you're able to do that, players should be able to kind of get into the groove. It did not help though that the player aid had a printed mistake on it, but this is just like a prototype version. It probably will change as it gets later into production, and I'm hoping so it changes, because it definitely needs to, because that's a glaring omission there. The other thing that was kind of interesting was that like the instruction manual had no pictures at all, which can be negative for some people, but I mean, it's 3 pages, and then you kind of know how to play the game. The game itself isn't that challenging. You play one card, you throw it, add it, drop it, or whatever, and adding meeples to the mix. Pretty self-explanatory there. Now, this is a dexterity game, and so if that is not your cup of tea, this is not a game that's going to kind of lead you into that. This isn't one of those games where like, well, I know you don't like dexterity games, but you gotta try this one, and then you'll just love it. Because it's not. It's totally not that game. If you're not into dexterity games, then this is not gonna change your mind. But if you don't mind dexterity games, or love them, in my case, then you're gonna find a lot of fun with this one. I think the idea and the concept is very, very simple. Nice little deck of cards, and just way too many meeples. But it works. This system really, really works. And it becomes approachable, and it's fast. It's like a 10-minute game. And you get like a lot of meeples. I don't want to open this up here now, because it's going to just spill out all over the floor. But for a good bang for your buck, like Fantasy Tavern Brawl definitely gets a thumbs up from me. Also, it's astronomically meta how the characters in the game are playing the game, even though it's an abstract other brawl that's happening late behind them in the picture with a character that's not even in the game. I clearly have too much time on my hands. Woo! Once again, thank you for watching Cardboard East. My name's Jay. I play board games from Asia and share what I find with all of you. If this is your first time at the Cardboard East, stick around, chill out, and check out some of the videos that we have. We have a lot of top 100s. I just reviewed like all these games that I got from Tokyo Game Market earlier this year. And with Gen Con right around the corner, do expect a Gen Con video coming up where I'll be talking about all the cool Asian board games that I know of that are going to be at Gen Con. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you in the next video.